All right, ready for a deep dive. This time, it's all about gay icons and history.
Sounds fascinating.
And you've given me a ton of material to work with.
I hope it's interesting.
Oh, it is. Book excerpts, some quotes I've never heard before, even some really cool photos.
Wow, you aren't kidding about the deep dive.
You really outdid yourself this time.
Well, you know I love this stuff.
It looks like you're really interested in all those hidden LGBTQ stories.
Yeah, how they impacted culture and society over time.
From ancient times all the way to modern pop culture.
That's the idea. Connect personal stories with the fight for LGBTQ rights.
It's like a secret history lesson.
Exactly, hidden in plain sight.
And get this, we're starting way before Hollywood.
Really? How far back?
Think ancient Greece, Alexander the Great, and his lifelong partner Hephaestion.
They were openly a couple back then.
Openly. And Sappho, the poet, she's the reason we have the word lesbian.
Wow, that's amazing. I never knew that.
They really challenge what we think we know about history, don't they?
Yeah. Absolutely. Like, Alexander the Great wasn't even shy about loving Hephaestion.
Made him a high-ranking officer in his army.
So in certain circles, same-sex relationships are totally normal.
It makes you think about how much history we don't know, right?
Makes you wonder what other stories are hidden.
Oh, for sure. And speaking of hidden stories, let's talk about art.
You thinking what I'm thinking.
Artists throughout history, gay artists who had to code their identities in their work.
Yeah, to survive.
Like Leonardo da Vinci.
Oh, definitely. I mean, being openly gay back then was really dangerous.
Renaissance. So creative, but also so restrictive.
Right. And some people think Da Vinci hid messages about loving men in his art.
And his writing, too.
Like secret codes.
Makes you see those masterpieces in a whole new light,
It's
right?
fresh layers and layers.
Okay, now fast forward a few centuries to 20th century Hollywood.
Hollywood. The land of hidden lives.
Studios controlled everything.
The images, the stories, the whole thing.
Arranging marriages for stars, orchestrating fake relationships.
All to hide who they really were.
Like Rock Hudson.
Oh, yeah. The classic leading man.
And he was married to his agent's secretary.
Can you imagine the pressure?
And then his AIDS diagnosis.
Such a huge impact. For him personally, but also for how people viewed the disease.
Really makes you think about how much of celebrity is just manufactured.
And the pressure to live in the shadows.
But wait, because things start to change in the 70s?
The 70s? What happened then?
Disco.
Disco.
It wasn't just music and fashion.
It was a movement.
A space for LGBTQ people to express themselves.
And find community.
Like the Village People.
Oh, I love them. So clever.
Using hypermasculine looks to subvert expectations.
And appeal to everyone.
Talk about YMCA.
That song.
An anthem for everyone.
Yeah, you're straight.
Disco was a soundtrack for liberation.
Right. But something else was brewing.
What's that?
The Stonewall riots.
Oh, a turning point for sure.
The start of the fight for LGBTQ rights in the U.S.
And it all connects back to Greenwich Village.
Such a tolerant and artistic place.
Even before Stonewall, there were acts of resistance.
People standing up for themselves.
Like the sip-in at Julius's bar.
Challenging those discriminatory laws.
Paved the way for bigger movements.
Amazing how it all started.
It shows that change starts with small acts of courage.
So true.
And sometimes tragedy can fuel progress, too.
Oh, yeah.
The impact of the HIV/AIDS crisis on the gay community in the 80s.
So much fear and prejudice back then.
It's heartbreaking to read about.
But it led to more awareness and activism.
Like Freddie Mercury, the lead singer of Queen.
He was such an icon.
When he announced he had AIDS, it helped destigmatize the disease.
He was so brave.
His story shows how one person can change things.
Absolutely.
Even when facing huge challenges.
Inspiring.
But let's talk about something a little lighter.
Okay, I'm ready.
Movies and TV. How they started bringing LGBTQ stories into the mainstream.
Finally. It was a long time coming.
We're talking Cabaret, La Cage aux Folles.
Classics.
And later, shows like Will and Grace and Brokeback Mountain.
It's fascinating to see how things evolved.
Right. From hidden stories to center stage.
Comparing the French La Cage aux Folles to the American remake, The Birdcage.
Oh, good point. Totally different vibes.
Shows how culture shapes the way we see things?
Makes you think about how media influences us, right?
For sure.
But it's not all about celebrities and big events.
No. What else is there?
Our sources talk about everyday people, too.
Oh, that's interesting.
Like Randy Jones, the cowboy from the Village People.
No way. I love that guy.
There's an excerpt from Macho Man, The Disco Era, and Gay America's coming out.
That sounds like a great read.
It talks about his journey from a small town to the heart of disco.
What a life.
Shows how attitudes were changing within the gay community, too.
Makes sense.
After Stonewall, there was this feeling of breaking free.
A new kind of masculinity.
It was reflected in everything: music, fashion, how people express themselves.
Those platform shoes and tight jeans.
They were making a statement.
Definitely.
And disco was the soundtrack.
A space to be free.
And speaking of expression, we can't forget gay icons in music.
Oh, like who?
Elton John, Freddie Mercury.
Legends.
Their flamboyant style, their openness about their sexuality.
They challenged so many norms.
Their music connected with everyone.
Elton John's All the Girls Love Alice.
Or Queen's We Are the Champions.
Anthems for everyone, no matter who you love.
Music is powerful like that.
Brings people together.
But even as these icons were breaking barriers, there was the AIDS crisis looming.
So much fear and sadness.
The stories about the prejudice back then are truly heartbreaking.
But the community came together.
So much activism, so much compassion.
Organizations like ACTUP fought so hard.
And everyday people taking care of the sick.
It's inspiring.
Shows the strength of community.
We have to care for each other.
Fight for justice.
And make sure everyone has health care.
Speaking of important places, what about Greenwich Village?
Oh, such a key location.
It was a haven for artists and activists.
And free thinkers.
People could be themselves.
Find community.
Like a cultural melting pot.
A place to belong.
And certain spots became really important for the LGBTQ community.
Which ones?
Like Julius's Bar and the Stonewall Inn.
I've heard of those.
The sip-in at Julius's Bar was huge.
Oh, yeah. That was a major act of resistance.
Challenged those laws and set the stage for Stonewall.
Wow.
It's amazing how small acts can lead to big change.
So true.
So our sources don't just focus on the past.
Real.
They look at the present, too.
Oh, interesting.
How have LGBTQ people been represented in film and television?
That's a big question.
Right. How has it evolved?
And what are the challenges now?
Our sources talk about groundbreaking films and TV shows.
The ones that push boundaries.
They brought LGBTQ stories to everyone.
From Cabaret to Brokeback Mountain.
We see how characters are portrayed differently over time.
It reflects how society changes.
Like compare a gay couple in La Cage aux Folles to one in Modern Family.
That's a good example.
We've gone from stereotypes to more realistic portrayals.
It's progress.
But there's still work to do.
Definitely.
We need more diverse stories, more authentic voices.
To really show the LGBTQ experience.
These sources make us want to keep pushing for progress.
I agree.
Create a world where everyone is celebrated.
To who they truly are.
I have to admit, I'm obsessed with the costumes in these photos.
Me too.
Elton John's feathers, the Village People's uniforms.
Fashion has always been a way to express yourself.
Especially in the LGBTQ community.
A way to subvert norms.
Right. Challenge the status quo, start
Yeah.
conversations. It's amazing how an outfit can make a statement.
It's powerful.
But these sources go deeper than just appearances.
They do.
They talk about the emotions of living authentically.
The challenges, the
The
joys,
struggles of coming out, navigating relationships.
resilience.
They show the universal human experience.
We're all connected, even if our journeys are different.
We have the same hopes, fears, and dreams.
Exactly.
And one thing we all experience is loss.
It's part of life.
Our sources talk about the impact of the AIDS crisis.
So devastating.
So much fear and loss.
But also so much courage.
People coming together to support each other.
Like ACTUP fighting for treatment.
And people caring for the sick, even when it was risky.
That's true love.
It shows the power of community.
And our responsibility to advocate for each other.
We have to fight for justice.
And make sure everyone has access to health care.
We've made progress, but the fight for LGBTQ rights isn't over.
You're right.
Our sources talk about the battles that are still going on.
Like what?
Marriage equality, anti-discrimination laws.
Basic human rights.
And sadly, there's a backlash happening in some places.
Trying to undo all the good work.
It's a reminder to stay vigilant.
And engage.
We can't get complacent.
We have to keep pushing for change.
And change starts with education
And understanding.
and empathy.
Exactly.
These sources help us see the world differently
Challenge our assumptions.
and understand the LGBTQ experience,
History is about people.
their struggles and their triumphs,
Learning from the past.
so we can build a better future.
For everyone.
This deep dive has been quite a journey.
It has.
So insightful, inspiring, and even fun at times.
I agree.
It reminds us that history is alive,
It's always evolving.
and we're all a part of it.
We all have a role to play.
What are your biggest takeaways from all this?
That's a tough one.
What really resonated with you?
I'm really struck by the courage of LGBTQ people throughout history.
Yeah, me too.
They faced so many obstacles, but they never stopped fighting.
They kept creating, loving, and pushing for change.
It's a reminder that we all have a part to play in building a better world.
I love that. For me, it's the power of visibility.
Tell me more.
Seeing ourselves reflected in art, in media, in history,
It can change everything.
it can inspire us to embrace who we are.
And fight for a world where everyone can be themselves.
Exactly.
Speaking of identity, we haven't talked about gender identity yet.
Oh, you're right. Our sources mention some fascinating people.
People who challenged gender norms,
Cross-dressing performers, transgender pioneers.
they were way ahead of their time.
Like Christine Jorgensen,
I've heard of her.
one of the first Americans to undergo gender confirmation surgery.
Wow. Back in the 1950s.
Her story really sparked a conversation about gender.
It's amazing how these pioneers paved the way.
They made it easier for others to come after them.
But even today, transgender people face so many challenges.
Discrimination, violence, lack of health care.
It's heartbreaking.
It shows that the fight for equality is far from over.
We have to keep fighting.
We have to challenge transphobia
Create safe spaces.
and make sure everyone has the chance to live authentically.
No matter who they are.
And we're starting to understand gender differently now.
How so?
It's not just as simple either.
Right, there's so much more to it.
Our gender is a spectrum.
And we're finally starting to see that.
It's exciting to see these conversations happening.
More open and honest than ever before.
We could dive even deeper into this.
Oh, I'd love to.
But we're running out of time for this part of our deep dive.
Oh, no. I guess that's the nature of history and culture.
There's always more to learn.
And explore and
All right, Grandpa.
uncover.
I can't wait for the next part.
Me too. But before we go, any final thoughts?
Let me think.
Anything you want to leave our listeners with?
Well, I think these sources challenge us to be more curious,
Yes,
more compassionate,
I love that.
and more engaged with the world around us.
So true.
History isn't just something that happened in the past.
It's still shaping us.
It's a living narrative that affects our present and our future.
That's a great point.
We have to learn from it.
And for me, this is a call to action.
What do you mean?
We can't just be passive observers.
We have to do something.
We have to shape history, fight for justice,
Make a difference.
create a world where everyone can be their true selves.
I couldn't agree more.
And that brings us to something we haven't really talked about yet.
What's that?
Coming out.
Coming out.
How it's evolved over time. Oh, yeah. That's a whole other topic.
Our sources describe how different it was in the past.
So much secrecy and fear.
Imagine risking everything just for being yourself.
Your job, your family, your friends.
It's hard to even imagine.
And for many people, that risk still exists.
It's true, but it's getting better.
It is.
More people are coming out younger,
Finding acceptance.
building supportive communities.
I think social media has helped a lot.
It's given people a platform to connect.
Share their stories and find their people.
Even if they can't do it in person,
It's been a game changer.
social media has its downsides,
For sure.
but it's definitely helped LGBTQ visibility.
And awareness.
We see a new generation of activists
And influencers.
using their voices to fight for change.
It's so inspiring.
It really is. But as much as we celebrate progress,
We can't forget the fight isn't over.
our sources talk about the battles that are still happening.
Like what?
Marriage equality.
And that's still an issue.
In some places, yeah.
Wow.
Anti-discrimination laws.
People are still fighting for basic rights.
It's sad but true.
And there's even a backlash happening.
People trying to take away the rights that have been won.
That's terrible.
It's scary, but it's a reminder to keep fighting
Stay engaged.
and never give up.
We can't be silent.
Exactly. And the best way to fight is with,
Knowledge.
yes, and understanding.
And empathy.
That's where these sources come in.
They teach us so much.
They challenge our assumptions.
And help us see things from a different perspective.
They remind us that history is about people
Real people.
with their own struggles and triumphs.
It's not just dates and facts.
It's about understanding each other.
And working together to create a better future.
A future where everyone is treated equally.
That's the dream.
Okay, I think it's time to wrap up this part of our deep dive.
Already.
I know. But we'll be back soon.
Good. I'm ready for more.
Before we go, though, I have one final thought.
I'm listening.
It's about those hidden figures. The ones whose stories aren't in the history books.
The ones we don't know about.
Everyday people who live their lives authentically, even when it was hard.
When it was dangerous.
Their bravery is incredible,
They paved the way for us.
even if we don't know their names.
Their stories matter.
And their legacy lives on.
So how do we uncover those hidden stories?
That's a great question.
How do we honor those who fought for change?
We have to be curious.
Ask
Look
questions.
beyond the mainstream narrative.
Dig deeper.
Explore local archives. Find those oral histories.
There's so much waiting to be discovered.
And we have to support LGBTQ historians and storytellers.
They're the ones who keep these stories alive.
They make sure history is inclusive and complete.
And as we uncover these stories, we might be surprised by what we find.
The connections, the parallels to today's challenges.
History repeats itself, but we can learn from it.
Speaking of connections, our sources talk about coming out,
Coming out.
how it's evolved over time.
Things have changed a lot.
It used to be this huge, secretive event.
Full of fear and uncertainty.
People risked everything just to be themselves.
It's hard to imagine.
And sadly, for some, that risk is still real.
But things are getting better.
More people are coming out younger,
Finding acceptance and support.
building communities.
Social media has definitely played a role.
It's given people a platform to connect.
Share their stories, find their people.
It's a double-edged sword, but its impact is undeniable.
I agree.
We see a new generation of activists and influencers.
Using their voices to make a difference.
It's really inspiring.
It is. But as much as we celebrate progress,
We can't forget that the fight isn't over.
there's still so much work to do.
Our sources highlight the ongoing battles.
What kind of battles?
Marriage equality.
Really? People are still fighting for that.
In some places, yes.
Wow.
Anti-discrimination laws.
Just for being who they are.
Unfortunately, yes.
That's awful.
And there's even a backlash happening.
People trying to take away rights.
It's a reminder that we can't be complacent
We have to stay vigilant.
and keep fighting for what's right.
I'm ready to fight.
Me too. And the best way to fight is with,
Education.
yes, and understanding.
And empathy.
That's what these sources teach us.
They open our eyes
Challenge our assumptions.
and help us see things from a different perspective.
They remind us that history is about people,
Real people with their own stories.
struggles and triumphs.
It's not just about dates and facts.
It's about understanding each other.
And building a better future together.
I think that's a perfect place to end this part of our deep dive.
I agree. It's been a great conversation.
We've covered a lot of ground,
From ancient history to modern times.
from personal stories to global movements.
It's been fascinating.
And we'll be back soon to continue our exploration.
I can't wait.
But for now, we'll leave our listeners with this thought.
What's that?
The fight for equality is a marathon, not a sprint.
So true.
There will be setbacks, there will be challenges.
But we can't give up.
We have to keep moving forward,
One step at a time.
and we have to do it together.
United, we
Exactly. So let's keep learning
keep growing.
and keep fighting for a world where everyone can be their true selves.
I'm in.
Me too. And I know our listeners are too.
We're all in this together.
And together, we can make a difference.
I believe that.
Me too. So until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep pushing for a better world.
See you next time. They really challenge us, these stories.
To be more curious,
Yeah, more compassionate.
more engaged.
Exactly. It's like history's not just something that happened back then.
It's still with us.
It's alive, you know? It shapes who we are today.
And we can shape it too.
We can.
We can't just be observers. We have to make history.
Make history. Wow, that's a powerful thought.
We have to fight for justice, create a world where everyone can be themselves.
I like that.
And that reminds me, we haven't really talked about coming out yet.
Coming out.
Yeah, how that experience has changed over time.
Oh, yeah. It's so different now.
Our sources describe how it was in the past. So much secrecy.
So much fear.
It's hard to imagine now, but people risked everything to be themselves.
Their jobs, their families.
Their whole lives could change.
It's still a risk for some people.
It is, but it's getting better.
It's true. More people are coming out younger now.
Finding acceptance, building communities.
I think social media has made a big difference.
Me too. It's
Yeah.
a way for people to connect, share their stories.
Find their people, even if they can't do it in person.
Right. It's been a real game changer.
Social media has its problems, of course.
Definitely. But it's hard to deny its impact on LGBTQ visibility.
And awareness.
We see a whole new generation of activists using their platforms to fight for change.
It's pretty amazing.
It really is. But as much as we celebrate the wins,
We can't forget there's still a long way to go.
the fight's not over.
Our sources make that very clear.
They talk about the battles that are still happening.
Oh, like what?
Marriage equality is still an issue in some places.
Really?
Anti-discrimination laws.
That's unbelievable.
And there's a backlash happening.
Backlash. What do you mean?
People trying to take away the rights that have been won.
Oh, wow, that's scary.
It's a reminder that we can't get complacent.
We have to stay active, stay informed.
Exactly. And the best weapon we have is,
Knowledge.
yes, an understanding.
And empathy.
That's what makes these sources so important.
They really open your mind.
They help us see the world through different lenses
They challenge us to think differently.
and to understand the LGBTQ experience.
History is about people, right?
Real people with their own unique stories.
Their struggles, their triumphs.
It's not just about facts and dates.
It's about connecting with each other
Understanding our shared humanity.
and working together to create a better future.
I love that. And speaking of understanding the past,
What about it?
we need to acknowledge the unsung heroes, the ones who lived their lives authentically even when it was dangerous.
The ones who didn't make the history books.
Exactly. They paved the way for us.
They were so brave.
Their stories might be hidden, but their impact is undeniable.
So how do we bring those stories to light?
We have to be curious, ask questions, look beyond the mainstream narratives.
Dig deeper, explore those archives.
Find the oral histories, the personal accounts,
There's so much out there waiting to be discovered.
and we have to support LGBTQ historians and storytellers.
They're the keepers of these important stories.
They make sure that history is inclusive and represents everyone.
I think that's so important.
Me too. And as we uncover these hidden stories,
What happens then?
we might be surprised by the connections we find, the parallels to today's world.
Oh, yeah. History often repeats itself.
But we can learn from the past, break the cycle.
And make things better for future generations.
Okay, I want to shift gears a bit.
What you thinking?
I'm looking at these amazing photographs you included with the sources.
Oh, yeah. Those are great.
The fashion, especially. Elton John's stage costumes, the Village People's uniforms.
So iconic.
It's clear that clothing has always been a powerful tool for self-expression.
Especially for LGBTQ people.
It's a way to challenge norms, make a statement.
Remember those platform shoes from the disco era?
Oh, yeah. And the tight jeans, the glitter.
They weren't just clothes, they were a statement.
They were saying, this is who I am, and I'm not afraid to show it.
I love that.
And those bold statements weren't just on stage or in the clubs.
They were everywhere.
Our sources talk about LGBTQ people from all walks of life.
Their everyday struggles and triumphs.
Their stories are so relatable, so human.
They remind us that we're all connected, no matter our differences.
Exactly. We all have hopes and dreams, fears and anxieties.
We all experience love and loss.
And speaking of loss, our sources don't shy away from the HIV/AIDS crisis.
Such a dark time.
So much fear, prejudice, and loss.
But also so much courage and compassion.
People taking care of each other, even when it was dangerous.
Organizations like ACTUP fighting for treatment and awareness.
It's a reminder that we have to take care of each other
And fight for justice.
and never give up hope.
Never give up.
And that fight for justice often means challenging social norms.
Pushing boundaries, disrupting the status quo.
Our sources talk about how LGBTQ people have done that throughout history.
In so many ways.
Through art, activism, even everyday acts of defiance.
It's about refusing to be silenced.
Demanding visibility, demanding equality.
And challenging the way we think about gender.
That's right.
Yeah.
Our sources touch on the evolving concept of gender identity.
It's not a simple binary anymore.
We're starting to understand that gender is a spectrum.
There's so much more to it than just male and female.
And our sources highlight some of the pioneers who helped shift the conversation.
Yeah, like who?
Christine Jorgensen, for example.
Oh, yeah. The first American to undergo gender confirmation surgery.
Back in the 1950s. Imagine that.
That's incredible.
Her story really challenged the way people thought about gender.
She was a true trailblazer.
And she paved the way for so many others.
It's amazing how one person can make such a difference.
But as much as we've progressed,
There's still so much work to do.
transgender people still face so much discrimination.
Violence, lack of access to healthcare.
We have to create a world where everyone feels safe and respected.
No matter who they are or how they identify.
And that includes challenging transphobia
And creating safer spaces.
and making sure everyone has the opportunity to live authentically.
That's what it's all about.
And speaking of authentic lives,
What about them?
we need to celebrate the contributions of LGBTQ people to society.
Their accomplishments are often overlooked.
Their stories aren't always told.
But they've made such a difference in every field.
From art and science to politics and activism,
We have to make sure their voices are heard.
their stories need to be told.
Their legacies need to be honored.
And as we delve deeper into these hidden histories,
What do we learn?
we see the creativity, the resilience, the determination of the LGBTQ community.
They've overcome so much.
They've fought for their rights, built communities, and created beautiful art.
It's inspiring.
It really is.
Mm.
And it gives me hope for the future.
Me too.
There's still work to be done.
Oh, definitely.
But the progress that's been made is incredible.
It shows what's possible when we work together.
And it reminds us that we all have a role to play in shaping the future.
We can't be passive observers.
They have to be active participants in the fight for equality.
I'm ready to fight.
Me too. And I think our listeners are too.
We're all in this together.
And together, we can make a difference.
I believe that.
Me too.
Okay.
So on that note, I think we're ready to wrap up this part of our deep dives.
Already?
I know. But we'll be back soon to continue the conversation.
Good. I can't wait.
Before we go, though, I want to leave our listeners with a thought to ponder.
It's like we owe them a debt of gratitude.
We do, for their courage, their willingness to be themselves.
Even when it was hard, even when it was dangerous.
Makes you wonder, how can we learn more about those hidden stories?
Right. How do we honor those who fought for change, even when nobody was listening?
It starts with curiosity, I think.
Being curious.
Yeah. Asking questions, looking beyond the usual stories.
Digging deeper.
Exactly. Explore local archives, those oral histories, the personal stories.
There's so much out there waiting to be discovered.
And we have to support LGBTQ historians and storytellers.
They're the ones who keep these stories alive.
They make sure history is told from all sides,
Yeah.
that everyone is represented.
It's so important to have those different perspectives.
It is, and as we uncover those hidden stories,
Yeah.
we might find unexpected connections, parallels to what's happening today.
Oh, absolutely. History has a way of repeating itself.
But maybe by understanding the past, we can break the cycle.
Make things better for the future.
Exactly. And speaking of connections, our sources talk about coming out,
Coming out, huh?
how it's changed over time. It used to be this huge secretive thing.
So much fear and uncertainty.
People risked everything just to be themselves.
It's hard to believe people had to go through that.
I know, and for some people, sadly, that risk is still real.
That's true, but it's definitely getting better.
It is. More people are coming out younger, finding acceptance.
Building communities, finding support.
And I think social media has had a huge impact.
Social media, huh?
Yeah. It's given people a platform to connect, share their stories, find others like them.
Even if they can't do it in person.
Exactly. It's been a game changer, for sure.
It has its downsides, of course.
Oh, definitely. But it's
Right.
undeniable, its impact on LGBTQ visibility and awareness.
That's for sure.
We see a whole new generation of activists and influencers
Yeah.
using their platforms for good.
Fighting for equality, inspiring others.
It gives me hope for the future.
Me too.
But we can't forget the fight's not over.
Right. There's still so much work to do.
Our sources talk about the battles that are still going on.
Like what kind of battles?
Marriage equality is still an issue in some places.
You're kidding.
Anti-discrimination laws, basic human rights.
It's unbelievable that people are still fighting for those things.
I know, and there's a backlash happening in some parts of the world.
Backlash? What do you mean?
People trying to undo the progress that's been made, take away rights.
Wow, that's scary.
It's a reminder that we can't get complacent. We have to stay engaged, keep fighting
So how do we fight back?
with education, understanding, empathy.
That's where these sources come in.
Exactly. They help us see things from different perspectives, challenge our own assumptions.
They help us understand the LGBTQ experience.
They remind us that history is about people, their struggles, their triumphs.
It's about understanding each other, building a better future together.
This deep dive has been quite a journey.
It has.
Insightful, inspiring, even fun at times.
I've learned so much.
Me too. It's a reminder that history is alive, constantly evolving.
And we're all part of it.
We all have a role to play in shaping its narrative.
So what's the takeaway? What do we do now?
For me, it's a call to action.
Call to action.
Yeah. To be more curious, more compassionate, more engaged in creating a better world.
A world where everyone feels seen, heard, valued for who they are.
Exactly. That's the world I want to live in.
Me too. And I think we can make it happen.
I think so too, and I think our listeners are with us.
We're all in this together.
And together, we can make a difference. So until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep fighting for that better world.
See you next time.